This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so I guess everyone is already here, yeah? Or we're waiting somebody more? Okay, let's take 1 minute. We'll wait till.
Yes, Irina, and all our participants, good morning or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you join us. So today our team of Institute of Democracy and Development start a new cycle of seminars, and this cycle of seminars, it's about fighting with Russian disinformation and with Russian propaganda in Europe and in the United States, and obviously in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. So we prepared this event for 1 month ago. That's why we can present our interesting speakers, and they also have direct examples of how Russian disinformation work, and like direct examples which can be used in future with American think tanks, with American legislators, with American analytical structures, and to cooperate for more powerful and more effective fight with Russian disinformation campaigns. So today with us, me, Katerina Одарченко. I'm CEO and founder of Institute for Democracy and Development. It's Ukrainian think tank which worked by 9 years on analytical work, on informational work, educational work, science work, and also I'm professional in communication, and now I'm work here in Washington, D.C. Area, also on advocacy of Ukraine, on analytical issues about Ukraine. Also with us, Irina Kopanitsa, public speaker, and she in advisory board of White Ribbon Ukraine. So she work a lot on women's rights and human rights, and also activist on fighting with Russian disinformation, work a lot of also with US Embassy in Ukraine. So every speaker also will represent their experience more deeply, but I will represent it shortly. So also with us, Alexei Burlakov, he famous Ukrainian journalist, researcher of social communications and propaganda, and very, very popular blogger. Also with us, Lana Koshkareva. Sorry if my pronunciation is not right. Одарченко is also hard to pronounce. So she Canadian citizen, and she have also Ukrainian, Polish roots, was born in Serbia, and today residents of Edmonton, Alberta now. So she has been TV journalist and PR manager, and how works with different interview with Canadian government, and she also will represent some her work and research when she will have a speech. Also today with us our colleagues from Horvatia. So we also invite Mark Plavetic. He executive officer of National Federation of Croatia American Cultural Foundation, focusing on bilateral relationship between US and Croatia, and he also work on advocacy issues here in DC. With us also Malka Malka Bonder. She PR professional and also famous journalist. She organized news in covering various subjects, also subjects which connect with Ukraine, and she more than 10 years work in professional PR work in journalism. Irina Miroshnik, PhD, President Flexible Packaging Association of Ukraine. So she businessman, entrepreneur, and member of supervisory board of Jewish Confederation in Ukraine, and also now very active volunteer on Ukrainian issues. And also we happy to see we happy to see with us I'm sorry, colleagues from Vienna, Austria. And we also waiting for two more Ukrainian journalists, who will join us a little later. Today also from Austria we have Dietmar Pichler, a disinformation analyst and advisor of international affairs, co-founder of Center for Digital Literacy and general secretary of NGO Ukraine Goes to Europe. Dietmar worked for a long time with issues which connect with Russian disinformation and also Russian disinformation in Europe. I think I will stop here because when other guests will join, we will represent their experience. And I also will ask Irina Kopanitsa to help me with co-moderating of this meeting. I will appreciate this. First of all, I think that it will be interesting to listen our journalists. So it's Mr. Burlakov and Ms. Bonder, and then we can move. To a little perspective from Vienna, Austria, then perspective from Irina on Ukrainian issues, and then we will move to our region, so to Canada and United States, and people who work here on their perspective.
Katerina, don't you mind?
Yeah.
I will keep helping you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Continue. The main idea of our today's Zoom call, it's to be introduced to each to other, to share our issues and our focus of our work. But the very, very main focus of today's Zoom call, it's not just to talk between ourselves. It's just to announce main points where considered to be that need to be mentioned all over the world. And Katerina's company, Katerina's think tank, she's like one of the best, on my opinion, one of the best professionalists working for dozens of years with international media, with international think tanks, with international politicians from Brussels to Washington to Strasbourg, and not only, but decision makers mainly there. So the main idea is then afterwards, I guess we will share with Katerina our notes, our presentations, and she will build some analytics, some informational report that so our idea to spread the world, to help the world be prepared for some fakes and disinformational campaigns of Russia. So
I will add how it works. So here in DC, no, as you know, like all people wrote analytical work about Ukraine and different articles. So I think you can see the same in California. But it's very important to show today in our speech direct examples. So direct examples how it works. And in second part of our discussion, show your perspective. What is the most useful method of fight with this Russian disinformation. So I will give you example. For example, in United States, Russia use their bots, you know, like trolls in internet to share in internet their messages, and of course messages for people who spoke Russian in United States. So that's why if we do direct media monitoring for keywords, and if we can like block these bots with Russian messages and also show how it's working technical issues, it will help us to fight with these issues in future, and even on the next election campaign, which really will start nowadays. So it was, I understand, for example, in internet work, and they were active in the same work in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. So if you will represent also some message boxes which Russia share in media, please also set like this message box, and like they use on these TV channels, and think on second round of discussion how we can fight with that. So obviously we will share this information and press release with key stakeholders. So it's think tanks and it's people on the Hill, I mean House and Senate, and people who work as legislative assistants for them. And of course, we plan to represent a report about Russian disinformation campaign in US separately, and in Europe separately, and in Eastern Europe and Central Asia separately. So thank you so much. Thank you, Irina, for helping me today. And
Katerina, how much time, Katerina? Sorry, how much time do you expect for each, and what is our timing? How long?
Yes. Thank you for this mention. So we will every speaker have 5 or 7 minutes for first case representing, and then we will have 3 or 4 minutes for conclusions in the second round of our discussion. So that's why now for presentation, everybody have 5 7 minutes, and I think we can start from Malka Bondar, and then move into Mr. Burlakov, and then move into other colleagues. So I think that this logic will work. Yeah.
Malka, please, could you please present? Malka, sorry, could you please present yourself, the main points about your biography, or what you think is necessary for us to know about you? Okay.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm originally from Ukraine, relocated to United States just during the war. So I used to work in the top publications in Ukraine for a long while. Was also analyzing the media affairs, not only in Ukraine, but also in the United States. I'm currently in LA, California, and over here I am working on my own agency, like Malka Communication. So what am I presenting now are actually the tricks that Russian propaganda is using in the media, in public speaking. It is well known that Russian propaganda consists on multiple different layers directed to different audiences. So today I would like to draw your attention to those that are directed to the American audience and that can really influence the public opinion here, because they are using the hesitation of waving part of the audience, which is kind of has some sympathy to Ukraine, but don't realize the whole importance of the issue and whole importance of the support that Ukraine is getting from United States. So what is going on? They do see in the news how about, like, for example, about the money that Joe Biden is offering to Ukraine as the support, and about the weapons that are transferred. And they are, as a taxpayers, they are connecting it with the own situation and the issues that they see out in Kentucky or in Alabama or wherever they live. And they kind of don't understand, like, why is it why United States are even participating in this issue, like, instead of dealing with the home affairs. It's a very widespread messages, and propaganda is using several tricks, like a direct text tricks that are influencing public opinion while being undetected by it. So in different words, the more we are emphasizing that those are tricks and those statements are false, the better audience is understanding the issue with Ukraine and the reason why United States are supporting it, and why is it important, why is it the best interest of United States. The first trick that I would emphasize is the substitution of names and concepts. It is actually the way of using sort of ignorance of the local audience. One of the examples is the switching names of, like, Soviet Union, the Russian Federation, and actually Russia. While discussing the historical affairs of Soviet era, propagandists are using the word Russia, and it gives a false impression that Russia Federation and Soviet Union are actually the same country, just in different historical periods. So for the audience that is not particularly interested in the history of Soviet Europe, of Eastern Europe, and didn't follow the history of last 30 years, for this kind of audience, it seems like an interior issue, like the issue inside the Soviet Union on that part of the world. And it is a strong false impression that what is currently going on, Ukraine was kind of a part of Russia, and now it is trying to be independent, and United States decided to interfere this situation, like to influence this conflict, which creates questions from the audience. And the way to fight it is emphasizing that Russia is definitely not full-fledged successor to United States, that all the agreements and all the political agenda of Soviet Union are not legitimate now, because the Soviet Union doesn't exist since 1990, and that Russia, as the Russia Federation as a state, was formed in 1991. So what is going on now, like, we are emphasizing that Ukraine is not a part of Russia that is trying to get independence now, that it is a full-scale democracy that is brutally invaded, in violating all the rules of international law. Emphasizing this, like, it may sound funny that we still have to explain it to people when you are in Ukraine or when you are in Europe, but here in the United States, a large part of audience really needs this emphasizing and explanation, because mixing these words in propaganda speech they really give this impression. Another message that is often used in the propaganda is claiming that Russia is reacting on violating some agreement, historical agreement of the past about non-expansion NATO to the east. It probably refers to the negotiation between Mikhail Gorbachev and Hans-Dietrich Genscher that used to be a foreign affairs minister of Germany, of FRG. So propagandists are claiming that there was an agreement and NATO is breaking it while trying to while negotiating with Ukraine about joining NATO. So that is why Russia claims that it is legitimate to react this way. So the way to fight with it is emphasizing that first, the participants of the negotiation, like Soviet Union, doesn't exist anymore. So there can't be a legit result of it having any weight for the international law at the moment. A second thing is emphasizing that those were verbal agreements that couldn't be legally enforced anyhow. And a third thing that, like, actually Russia Federation is not a successor of the Soviet Union. The third trick that I would like to emphasize is creating multiple mutually excluding messages, mutually excluding versions about the same event. For instance, when Ukrainian and Western media started publishing shocking pictures and descriptions of the tragedy of Bucha and Irpin, Russian propaganda reacted with different explanations. Why is it false? Like, for example, some Russian propagandists claimed that if you are making the picture bigger, or if you are making slow motion or look carefully, you can see that those were not humans but mannequins. The others are claiming that people were not actually dead; they were like alive but pretending to be dead. There were also a message that Ukraine kind of like brought those bodies from somewhere else and put it there to make in order to make those pictures. What effect are they gaining? They're not trying to make any of those versions truth-like. They're not trying to make the audience believe in any of those versions specifically. They're trying to overflow the attention of audience with different versions and to make it feel like the audience is tired of the question already, tired of the issue, and it seems to be too many details to dig in. It seems to be like too complicated for amateur analyzing, too time consuming for a regular person who is actually not an expert. So the majority of the audience, the audience that is not particularly like emotionally involved with the tragedy, the majority reacts like, I don't know what exactly is going on there. There are like too many versions on internet, too many versions of on media. So they're creating this quantitative versions is actually one of the tools, even though each of the versions is like not truth-like at all. The third tool, which I can tell also like very important and very wide use, is using the defamatory stereotypes that exist for a very long time and that were originally root to immigrants from former Soviet Union. Using those stereotypes while describing modern Ukraine. One of the latest example, this tool was used in order to diminish Vladimir Zelensky during his visit to Washington. One of the presenters of Fox News, Tucker Carlson, he paid a special attention to the outfit that Zelensky had during the visit and like while making his public speeches. It was not, we all know that it was not a formal suit. It was the basic elements of Ukrainian military uniform, which actually was very understandable in current situation, and it was a clearly right thing to do. But Tucker Carlson, he pointed out that a tight T-shirt that President Zelensky used to wear looks like the dress that a strip club manager would put on. So he was referring to the time of the Iron Curtain drop, where really different people from Soviet Union were immigrating to United States, and like some of them were former criminals or people working in gray zone. And coping with them, like having to face them, was not the happiest experience for Americans, and people still remember it. So Tucker Carlson is just using the stereotypes and describing Ukrainian president like this on TV. He is, for many people, he making him looking like one of those suspicious personalities that coming from nowhere, from those ununderstandable country from the East, and trying to negotiate with the top American politicians. So he creates, out of ignorance and being influenced by superstition and biases, he creates this hesitation of should top American politicians even deal with this guy if he looks like this. Another really important tool is claiming that the economy of Russia is stable or even growing, and that the sanctions that are implemented to Russia are not as affected as Western country would expect. What is the effect of this particular message? Obviously, the current situation impacted economically Americans and Europeans as well. They feel it less than people in Ukraine, obviously, but they still have some economical impact, like negative impact. So when someone is telling them that Russia almost reached the level of economy that it did have before the invasion, despite all the sanctions that implemented and even the new sanctions that it is facing now. They are asking themselves a question. So then, what is it for? if we are suffering even more than Russia Federation, so what is the reason of continuing those sanctions? So it is the way to influence the audience. And of course, those publications are based on manipulation facts and manipulation figures, which is actually a stamp for for any autocratic society. Manipulating figures and reporting a fake economical stability or a fake economical growth is not a new thing. So we know how it did work in Soviet Union, like for a long time, where no one monitors a real figure. So those are 4 tricky, invisible ways to influence the public opinion. Some other tools that are also used in media, and they are used by American politicians and American public figures who are supporting, for some reasons, the false impression about the conflict, is emphasizing that I will make a quote from one of the recent interviews of Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, that she said directly that American Democrats who are applauding and pushing and escalating this war. So it is a direct claim that the one, like the agent who is applauding and pushing and escalating the war is not Putin who really did it, that it is like American Democrats. So she is making like this false impression that for the audience, that we are dealing with the kind of like conflict between United States and Russia, and Ukraine is just a scene. So the Ukraine is just the place where it is going on, like the object, not a subject. So it is also like very demotivating for the American audience, and it gives this feeling. So it is just like another war that United States are participating. So the question, many people here listening to this have a question. So then, what for? Another like clearly damaging message for us is, like, for example, I had it recently in several interviews of one of the well-known public figures here. He's not even a politician, he's a psychologist, Jordan Peterson, that has like his own like YouTube channel and a very, very popular blog. He is calling it a proxy war between the United States and Russia, where Ukraine is just paying the price. It is like the same impression and the same false statement that is unfortunately quite widespread in American media. And the other message that Tulsi Gabbard is often using in her speeches sounds like this. She says, responsible people who are rooted in reality, not a fantasy. So she emphasized that the idea that Ukraine will win the war is a fantasy. That the only way to bring up the peace, to end this war, is diplomatic means, bringing together different stakeholders. So the suggestion is not to support Ukraine in fighting with Russia, in defending itself, but to push the kind of negotiation between Russia and Ukraine as if it can lead to any real result, to any acceptable result. So those are, and another message that is also like very strong in pro-Russian propaganda is even if Ukraine will win and the Russian regime will lose its positions, so then what? What is the American effect in it? Like, what is how America is benefit from it? Like, this question putting without the answer, this question hanging in the air, also like makes a very ruining impression that really like impacts the public opinion about the whole situation and about the role that United States is supposed to play and about the support that Ukraine is supposed to get from United States. So this message is actually claiming that the one coming after Putin is not necessarily better, that it's kind of not in American interest to make Russia weaker, like less powerful, that it will never be less aggressive. And the other message that I also have heard in speeches of Jordan Peterson, of Tulsi Gabbard, and different American public speakers, that if Putin will be replaced, or if Russia Federation will no longer exist as a federation, it will be impossible to control the usage of nuclear weapons. That is gonna be, and kind of they are picturing like apocalyptic situation. So the thing is,
Malka,
so
I'm very sorry. I will ask a bit to try to control our timing, okay?
Yeah, I'm finishing.
Thank you.
So it was actually the last statement that I wanted to make. So they are claiming that the Russia without Putin is the situation where nuclear weapons will be out of control, as if they can control it now. So they are ignoring the fact that there is a danger at the moment, and describing the more dangerous situation that may appear to reality if replacing Putin from the place where he is. So it is another very manipulative message that is unfortunately very widespread in the media, and the way to fight it that I will suggest is emphasizing the fact that the only way to reach the peace and the only way to create a stable situation in the eastern Ukraine and in the world in general is the victory of Ukraine, and the situation when like Russia with all its resources and all its weapons will be under the democratic control. So it's like the only way to keep the peace in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Very interesting points. I would ask our speakers to try follow our timing to get like 7 minutes as agreed of speech. Anyway, each of us will see afterwards, prepare a document with analytic with all materials of each speaker. So I would ask you to mention just the very main points and main focus of your activity. And so our next speaker is Katya Kasia mentioned, she would like to have the second is, I guess, Alexander Pozny. Am I remember correctly? Yeah. We were talking about
Mr. Burlakov, please.
Burlakov. I'm sorry. Okay. Burlakov. I just don't see is here still with us. Yeah. Okay. So, Mr. Burlakov, I would ask you to introduce yourself as you would like us to know you. Some main points from your view.
Thanks a lot. First of all, I want to thank you that you are here, everybody. It means that it's necessary and important for you to solve the Ukrainian problem, or to help to solve, at least. My name is Alexey Burlakov. I was born in Mariupol and started my work in Mariupol. I was almost 2015 year. And then I moved on Cyprus and worked on the consequences of Cyprus problem there. It's interesting work. And then I was back in Kyiv and continue my work there. Now I'm in Warsaw and continue to study conflicts, war conflicts, and propaganda. And I can tell you that in every conflict, every conflict looks on the next conflict by propaganda stuff. I prepared a little presentation. If you don't mind, I will try to demonstrate my. If you can let
1 moment,
me,
I will do it.
Let me to show my screen. First of all, I don't want to tell you about. I don't want to tell you about the top of the Russian propaganda, of top propagandists, or the most famous of them, because a lot of them is just at the top of the iceberg. And not only like that, the right
It's quite bad connection, maybe because it's a really poor connection now.
I would do all my best to fix it, but do you hear me? Tell me, just one. Okay, then continue. If further from the source of the information, further from the source of disinformation, the methods become less rude. So if in Russia you can say that cannibals live in Ukraine, they will believe it. Then in Ukraine, if you will say, Ukrainians would answer to you that you are crazy a little bit. And in Europe, Russians, will not use such a source principally because it doesn't work. So the most popular topics in Russian propaganda, here the scheme of this source and other people. It's like a virus, by the way. Those who near with the source become more effective. So propaganda inside Russia, I don't know, could we show the video? You saw this video. I hope it's about a freeze in Europe. People believe that live in Europe is harmful, bad, and you can't go there. Even at a time when the big city of Krasnoyarsk in Russia remains more than a health without gasification, they brag about blocking gas to Europe and show photos of frozen Krasnoyarsk or other cities in the hinterland to illustrate how bad things are in Europe right now, and you shouldn't go there. There's awful Europe. Even such videos that made by Russian propaganda, and they made in English. I don't know what for, because not all the Russians know English good, but they show it on their resources in internet, in TV, and so on. Another thing is often found, it's bogus authorities. You see now two publications about that, and as on the side, you see left in the screen, Russian media refers to Bloomberg, but doesn't provide links to Bloomberg. They say that Bloomberg considered something. In this case, that all the trees in the Berlin Park were cut down to keep warm. Can you imagine that? Another stuff is Nazism in Ukraine, so-called by Russians, by Russian propaganda is Nazism in Ukraine. They wrote a lot of articles, scientific studies have been published about 10 or more than 10 years in Russia. They write about the origins and give strange facts. For example, the story of changing the name of one of the Ukrainian divisions to Edelweiss had become widespread. The same name was in the Wehrmacht troops, but maybe Russian propaganda forgot that is also a unit in Russian with the same name, but they talk just about Ukrainian Edelweiss and make parallels for that. This story was slightly damaged when Vladimir Zelensky became a president, because it was difficult to say that he is Nazi. I'm not talking about the fact that every Russian knows that in Ukraine, Russia is at war with America, with the USA, not with Ukraine, because losing in a war with a small Ukraine is not prestigious. So they made everything that for that people thought that they fighting with Americans, Poland, and other people from NATO countries. So people don't even know that they are losing in this war. They are sure that the Russian army is defeating all their enemies. The Ministry of Defense several times can report that about the capture of the same village or city. Now you see a publication of the about Pesky. It's a city a small city near the Donetsk. They took this city, they captured this city by 4 times, if I don't mind. And really capture was a few months ago just. Another one, a good story, Kadyrov troops, for example, they published this photo, signing it, "We took Mariupol." Here is the photo near the mayor's office. But in fact, this is not the mayor's office, but the prosecutor's office in one of the outskirts of the city district. So they talk about they captured Mariupol then when they were on the outskirts of the city. Another one stuff, you are shelled by the Ukrainian army. Using the fact that it's impossible to determine being in the basement or being the bomb shelling in the safe place, you can say so. Where exactly the fire is being fired at you from, the Russians tell people through the video, radio, or internet that all this attacks was made by evil Ukrainians. Even in Mariupol now, destroyed by Russian aircrafts, many people actually think that Russians saved them. Because after shelling, they fill the void with the information. One of the main theses of Russian propaganda, Russians want to end the war, but the president of Ukraine doesn't enter into negotiations. In fact, the president of Ukraine says that conditions for negotiation, and that's all. Another very important story with which the Russians are trying to cover up their own failures or failures of mobilization, because the telegram channels, videos say that all Ukrainians are being dragged to war, even women. Even people who have gone abroad. On this slide, you see letters that supposedly come to Ukrainians that they are abroad now, and to consuls too in other countries. This is fake letters. This information made by propaganda to make people scared, and panic and thought about Ukrainian government worse than it. Yes, the world is tired of Ukraine. Sorry, this other slide, my mistake. The world is tired of Ukraine, but they shouldn't stop supporting. Here, Russian propaganda is brilliant, because if the world is tired of Ukraine, they wouldn't give money, they wouldn't give arms, and so on. They wouldn't be with Ukraine. Another one stuff that repeating in every conflict, even from the Second World War, is trying to say with who are you fighting for. Russian propaganda says is to Ukrainian militaries with whom you're fighting for, and they trying to say that the entire leadership has left the country, that the parliament leave the country, Zelensky is hiding in a bunker, or everyone forgot about them. It's for Ukrainian military. Of course, I hope they not believe in Russian propaganda, but it works. So there is also an interesting point here, because trying to whitewash their leaders, for example, Putin, they are trying to call Zelensky the way we call Putin. For example, we call Putin, like in translation, is man that lives in bunkerly, somebody, man that lives in bunker. And Russian propaganda started to using these words for the Zelensky. But if we know that Putin really lives in bunker, which one of them we don't know, Ukrainian president is not. But they are trying to move this border for the bad Putin and the good Zelensky. For the Putin who lives in bunker, and they trying to show that Zelensky too. Okay. Ukrainians are selling their weapons. This is the main stuff of the Russian propaganda. Theoretically, it should work on the people abroad. The people from should go on the streets and tell their government that you shouldn't give weapons arms to Ukrainians because they're selling that. But I think that European media, American media, it's broke this propaganda stuff. Okay. This, in principle, all propaganda is tuned to change that come in response to Russian aggression. So they do everything just in response after something. A little effort can break this logic. Awareness of the people can save the situation and change the outcome of the war. So I think we do a good job if we do this. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much. And so our next, anyway, anyone of the members and participants of today's Zoom will be able to request from Katerina all materials that you've heard here. Okay, so our next speaker,
I think it's interesting to go to Dietmar because he analyzed the same messages. I saw his work in like his Facebook page in Vienna, Austria, so we can compare messages which Alexei represent to us with messages which Russia use in Europe. I think it will be interesting. What do you think, Irina?
Yes, can you please be the next and tell us about Vienna, and please introduce us mentioning the main points that you would like to know about you.
So first of all, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, wherever you are on this beautiful planet in this very difficult time, especially for the Ukrainians. You have my full solidarity, of course, in this struggle for freedom and democracy. I think it's, so I will introduce myself briefly. I'm in Ukraine since 2011, almost every year, except the year of the pandemic, of course. There it was difficult to travel. And this is what differentiates me to other Austrians and to many Western Europeans. And this is also the root, one of the roots of the problem that we have on the information sector. We have a shower of disinformation that we get from the Russian Federation, but not only from the Russian Federation. We have to understand that certain communities, the so-called peace movement, which are sometimes more war collaborators actually, from the 60s and 70s in the West, also in the United States, by the way, they were very much influenced by the Soviet Union, by the propaganda of the Soviet Union. It sounds ridiculous to speak about it in 2023, but I can see it in Austria and also in Germany. These old elderly people, okay, to say it respectful, and what they do is they try to convince us basically things that we heard before, that the West is to blame, that Russia felt a threat from NATO, and that we need to give Russia something. We need to even reward the dictator for this terrible aggression, something which I totally regret, of course. And then we have this very huge lack of understanding about Ukraine. So people, Ukraine in their mind is a very young country, even if it has a long tradition of statehood. But of course, nobody was alive 100 years ago when there was the independent Ukraine before the Soviet Russia annexed it. So the empathy is not very big compared to other countries. So everybody tried, especially in Central Europe, it was all about relations to Russia, the big empire, still quite big country bordering us, and not Ukraine. Ukraine was, everybody knew that or thought that Putin wants to have his sphere of influence. And that's one of the main problems about the big picture. We have there a huge misunderstanding. And then what we see basically the strategy in Europe. I'm not talking about the daily fakes, you know everything about it. If there are war crimes, Russia denies it, social media trolls. This is I think everybody everywhere in the world the same. Bucha, European, and so on. They spread their fake news and try to confuse us. Like many ideas, you don't know what is reality because there are so many realities that you got confused. Everybody understands this strategy. But what we have here in Austria, in Germany, but also in other EU countries, that the Russian propaganda tries to demonize Ukraine. They tries to find arguments. They create fake narratives that actually Ukrainians are to blame. That, for instance, about the story of what happened 9 years ago in Donbass, they still spread the narratives that Ukrainians attacked the Russians in Donbass. Nobody understands that Russian-speaking people are everywhere in Ukraine, in all areas, not only in Donbass. Nobody understands that only a part of Donbass was actually under control of Russian proxies and Russian forces. Then we have the story about the so-called Russian language ban. So you have basically the situation that that many people, real people, I'm not speaking about trolls, believe that Russian language is banned in Kyiv or in other cities in Ukraine. I was in 3 months ago in Ukraine, in Uzhhorod, so Western Ukraine, and I heard Russian language on the street, and it was not banned, of course. I know this, and I try to convince people with examples, from TV, from media. Of course, there's an effort to speak more Ukrainian now, which I totally support. I think it's very important because Russian propaganda also has this idea that wherever somebody speaks Russian, it's Russia. This is this imperial idea. Which brings me to the next point. There are many people who don't understand that Putin or the Kremlin and all his followers from this Russian nationalistic, imperialistic view, that they actually try to restore the Russian Empire, that they don't accept independent Ukraine, that they don't respect the statehood of Ukraine. And this big picture is that what we are missing. And what Russia tries is that with every demonization campaign, when they say bad things about Ukraine, that we say, okay, this is very risky. The more we support, the more we make Russia angry. And they want us to believe that Ukrainians don't worth the support. This is what the demonization campaign does. And we have 2 vectors here. One, my colleague mentioned it before, are things that are similar to what the Russian audiences see. So these completely ridiculous stories about Satanists and that they eat Russian babies and something we heard already 9 years before. And then there is this more subtle narrative strategy, and this is even more dangerous because the big picture gets out of perspective. I also want to mention that we have these people from talk shows, so like in Germany and Austria, stakeholders. I would not call them experts because real experts don't spread disinformation. One example is Sarah Wagenknecht. She's from the party The Left. So we have basically the same here, by the way, as in the US, the far left and the far right. They are united in the support to Russian narratives. They also march together. They sign these open letters. They are campaigning that we should negotiate, that we need a peace agreement with the Russian Federation. But everybody understands that this is not possible and that Putin cannot gain any benefit from this war of aggression, but they frame it different, and they also always do it with a kind of, but the Ukrainians and the West is also to blame, blah, blah, blah. So this is very dangerous. And what we see is that actors like Sarah Wagenknecht, they have a lot of reach. And when they are invited to talk shows, their rhetoric is full of really bland disinformation on one hand. On the other hand, these things that sound somehow reasonable, but are totally not. It's like you need to negotiate and weapons don't solve anything. That's this pacifist movement. This is, it sounds ridiculous, but this is the most dangerous thing because you cannot stop weapons and aggression with words, with nice words. And they also totally ignore. This is also one of the main, really huge problems, that they ignore 2 things. And I think this is what I try to focus on, people informing about them. First of all, what is happening in the Russian Federation? What do propagandists, politicians, and all this Solovyov and Simonian and also the MPs from the Duma, what do they actually say? What are their goals? What is Peskov saying? That there is absolutely no space for negotiations. They want to erase Ukraine. Like, I don't need to tell you, you are aware. This is what people don't understand. And the second thing is, and this is also not mentioned often enough in our societies in Central Europe, is the situation in occupied territories. That Ukrainians are not defending themselves only to have their flag on a public building, but it's also basically or literally to liberate people from torture, from getting killed by the occupiers, from mass rape. and also the re-education campaign, by the Russian Federation, which is basically a cultural genocide. And this is, if you ignore all these facts, then the whole war for these people, for these, I call them propagandists in our television, became just more like a computer game. So yeah, okay, they need to find in the middle. It doesn't make any sense anymore. And they don't communicate what is actually on stake for Ukrainians, also for Europe, for the Europeans' security situation. And I would like to mention one specific example of Sarah Wagenknecht's fake news that she's spreading. Yesterday in the very, very big TV talk show, which is seen by the whole German-speaking world, so millions of people, she said that, oh, well, the Americans, they were also very active in Ukraine in 2014 because they invested $5 billion to buy Maidan, to sponsor the Euromaidan revolution. And this is for me super crazy to hear this, because this is fake that if it would not be that serious topic, I would say I get nostalgia from it, because I heard it in 2014. It's almost 10 years old. And this was, it's so ridiculous that she's still spreading it, because this $5 billion, it was development aid by the United States since 1991. So obviously it is not connected, of course, to Euromaidan. But people still believe it, and I debunked this. Most of my social media work is on Twitter. I debunked it. Hundreds of thousands of people saw it, so it was quite viral, because I placed a lot of tweets, and I received so much hate speech of her supporters, not all of them Russian bots or Russian trolls. And it is overwhelming how terrible the impact of this is, because even if you give them the evidence, if you debunk it, they still don't believe it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Irina, can I ask one question which I have? So I have two additional questions. So if Dietmar can share with us these links, I think it will be interesting to see like these links, and some people I know German, so they can look how it looks like. And so please share this link in our general chat, or links or screenshots, I don't know. And second, I think it's very interesting who is audience of these messages. So it's like low-income people or more older people. So who recipients of these messages, and who is target audience of these messages in Germany, because it can be for all Germany and Austria. And is it different in Austria and Germany? So it's question from me and Irina. As you can see, Lana asked also the next quote. Maybe you represent her a little later. So Dietmar, can you please answer to that question? Thank you.
I think the target group for such campaigns is always very much also based on ideology. If you have this peace generation, which is pro-Soviet left-wingers, and people who believe in conspiracy theories, people, and also the far right. If we speak about the far right, then we have lower educated people in Germany and Austria. If we speak about the far left, it's a little bit mixed. If in Eastern Germany, it's maybe lower educated than in Western Germany or in Austria. But the people, it's not only about education, it is very much about ideology, anti-Western sentiment. So people who hate the West, who hate the United States, and we heard it before, they see Ukraine not as a subject with people who want to decide their fate. They see it as an object between Russia and the United States. And this is the main problem. If you ask me about the difference between Germany and
how many these people? So it's 5%, 20%. So how many?
I it's unfortunately you have radicals that they are active, they are spreading the craziest things. They spread about that the Ukrainians did a genocide or something like that. Not so many, but more or less complying to such ideas. I think we have around 30%, at least, in Austria. There is a latest poll that more than 60% of Austrians want peace negotiations, and they don't suggest Ukrainians to defend themselves actively anymore, even if Ukrainians have to give territories to the Russian Federation. So that was quite shocking. There are other polls that look a little bit better. In Germany, the situation is better, but the real radical propagandists, they are in Germany, because in Eastern Germany, from this party, Die Linke and AfD, and we also received their propaganda. The difference between Germany and Austria is that Germany is a member of NATO, so they have some commitment to the Western values. They have also a different history, at least in Western Germany, and we don't have it. So our neutrality is an additional problem, because many people think, okay, Ukraine, Russia, two Eastern European countries, it's quite the same. I'm totally aware that it's absolutely not the same, of course, but unfortunately, many people don't understand it yet. And we have also a problem with our commitment to be part of the West, because we love to make business with dictatorships, unfortunately, and we have a lot of luggage in that regarding that, and a lot of problems. And I feel really ashamed for our foreign policy of the last decades, actually.
Thank you, and please share these links to everyone in chat. So Irina, can you represent a little bit more about Lana, and I will show after that video which Lana sent to us before conversation.
I don't know if she's in here, sorry.
Anyway, we can, Lana, then introduce a little bit more about yourself, and I ready to show to audience your movie which you sent to me.
Awesome, thank you so much. My pleasure, Katerina. So I'm a Canadian citizen, and I used to be a journalist in the past, and I was working a pretty long time in financial area as a public relations specialist, so I knew about such methods and techniques which we are discussing right now from the kind of opposite side of barricade. Now I'm 10 years living in Canada, but it was a little bit mispronunciation, I believe. So I was born and raised in Siberia, not the Serbia. So I'm holding two passports now, to be honest, that's Canadian and Russian. So that's why I'm supporting Ukraine, because I have long story, like 5 generations before me, it was some part of my family deported to Siberia from Poland. And after, like mom of my mom, she is born in Ukraine. So it's a very personal story for me. So back to the now, why it's very important to the fake riots and how it connects with the misinformation about the all those like quite opposition in Russia now. So you can share the video, please, and I will explain why I choose this. Thank you. So this is like a representation of how we can see this in the titles, in the international media, in the Russian media, like all those kind of protesters, they are trying to reach the attention, they are seeking for the attention of the international like authorities and Russian authorities. They're trying to say no to the any kind of aggression against of the Russian society. So it looks like this. They are rebellions and riots, and definitely the simple people on the street now, and as it's covered by journalists, it's true, they are really seeking for the freedom of choice, any kind of freedoms which we are having here in the Western world, and we are really cherish this. But I would like to describe what's behind of the story. And yes, those like how government fixing this, it's brutal. So this is very important video. I believe we can have a sound. Sorry. No. Okay, so I will start this, the one example of the opposition leader. Yeah, so we get this, the sound or not, sorry, but it's just for the people who can understand Russian, so that's a little bit complicated.
Oh, so
okay.
you need this with sound. Yeah, okay, I will do with sound one moment.
Because this is guy, it's one of the example which I believe it's very important to describe. So it's
okay. I will show, and maybe you can translate after what is about, because our audience, it's mainly Western audience. So yeah.
Мы с самого начала были против того, что происходило, так как мы являемся.
Sorry, it's no sound.
Да, это простой сайт, очень простой сайт, да. Ага.
Okay, so no worries. I will translate and try to explain what's my point is. So this guy, it's his name is Vyacheslav Maltsev. So he's one of the opposition leader, and he's like a very interesting example of misinformation and communication about the Russian opposition right now. So my topic is about how it can be used to leak the all kind of protests now organized by systematic opposition. How it's
Когда вот шел проект с девушками, у нас параллельно мой коллега запустил работу с детьми.
So I think the best recipe to destroy the revolution, it's designed by Russian secret services before, long time ago, during the KGB era. It was to render all kind of process by their meaningless. And I will explain why for the Putin's regime, it's very important to create the opposition, the riots by themselves as secret services, and now to create the PolitA, the variation of all kind of taste, color, ages, and political views for the opposition, because they can control it easily, and they can manage this as like a steam going from the society. So each of opposition leader, they must criticize the government of Putin. So it's their target. So after, by any kind of social media, because audience, they like it, they are trying to point on the obvious scenes of the Russian dictatorship and try to omit the main things, which is kind of like freedom of choice. We are losing all kind of freedoms. And after the enormous Russian propaganda inside of Russia, they are using this tool to push those leaders. So the system using this kind of misinformation and fake opposition, like the victims of the regime. So that's bringing us to the point, what their goal. Their goal is to show the all variation, all bunch of Russian society, which is kind of not Putin supporters. It's like nothing to do. We cannot change anything. It's no way we have to give up. And for each color of the protesters, potential protesters, it's become the obvious, okay, guys, we are going to be in the detention, they are going to do the repression. So see how many people they are already in the prison or poisoned or blah, blah, blah. So this is like very tricky twist, I know, but I will give the example. So this guy Maltsev, which is of Maltsev, which is on the screen right now, is trying to show. So he is appearing on Ukrainian TV right now as a like supporter of Ukraine. But back to the history, he was, and this is his citation on this video, he was like ready to go and on the military march and took the Kiev because he's the palette of his supporters, they are very right wing. So he was openly anti-Ukrainian leader, and it was kind of turbo patriots, we call them turbo patriots, it's like well known in Russia. And now, because he became again, it's a criminal case against him, so he escaped to France, and now he is magically supporting Ukraine. So he's like switch his opinion very fast because it was important to implement his views in the Western society. But it's completely fake as like his views, it's designed by the purpose. Second guy, so you can see the video, probably you can just show it without the sound, it's okay. And we can send it later for the people who can understand their opinions. It's very famous guy, he is a left wing of opposition, Nikolai Platoshkin, and he is building the nostalgia of USSR for very kind of older, any kind of older people. For example, my mom, she loved him very well, and she became the war supporter just because this guy, Nikolai Platoshkin, he was telling my mom, like, that's very important to fight against the Putin one way, but another way to fight with Ukrainians because NATO trying to do something with Russia, blah, blah, blah. So he was also under the house arrest, Nikolai Platoshkin, and after he became the hero of the left wing, and now he's explaining the necessity of the Russian aggression. And this guy on the screen right now, this is Maxim Shevchenko. He's also a very famous guy who is like slogan, sorry, I changed my mind again. And I changed my mind again, who is doing this, like on Monday, he's Putin supporter. On Friday, he's already criticizing the war in Ukraine. So he's doing those twists and switches like quite every week. But the people, as because Maxim Shevchenko, he's quite well-known journalist. For example, you can see right now, it's like ex-team of the Echo Moskvy, that's very famous radio station that they're quite popular even now. So it's a program where he's saying about the Bucha in this video. So he don't believe, as my colleague was saying before here, so he's not believing in Bucha as a real case. So he's trying to say, no, it's a real case. And he keep doing this, and our little project, we are collecting those guys. It's same for Maxim Shvets, for another guys, like we consider it Alexander Nevzorov like this, and Ilya Ponomaryov, he's also like this. So all those guys now, they are part of Ukrainian media, which is quite interesting and creative case. So how they are walking the same way. They are partially supporting Ukrainian point of view, being like on the Ukrainian side, but in the middle of the conversation, they always trying to implement something against of Ukraine and put a lot of questions in the brain of Ukrainians. That's how it's works. And I believe it's very important also to point one more guy, which is like more famous guy. That's Alexei Navalny. And I will give the example. In 2008, when it was the genocide and it was Russian aggression and Russian invasion in Georgia, and he was a leader of the protest against Georgia in Moscow. And I used to live in Moscow at this particular time, so I remember those protests. So it was kind of Nazi salute even, and he was leading the crowd to the Georgian restaurant in Moscow and saying like, people from Georgia, go home and all this stuff. But after several design actions under his public image, he became the most popular big star of opposition, so-called, and now he is like he is poisoning, and his arrest became the huge big event, and it started as a large protest against Putin. And yes, I know he's doing a lot of great investigation against the corruption in Russia and all those stuff. So, but to finish my little explanation and my point of view, I think some technical teams who is very, very well known as working for neolinguistic programming and stuff, they knew what the Russian society would like to hear. They knew it's very important to blow off the steam of the society, and they are doing this with the most radical groups. And even the Navalny case, of all those protesters, it was especially it's done by Russian secret services like Administratia Prezidenta and Staraya Ploshchad. They are there, they are still doing a lot of interesting things, and like they are very creative people. So they're trying to blow off steam from those protest groups. So people not going to do the real protest and real revolution. As I said before, they using this technology again in the game, and the same technology of fake riots, it was used in Belarus before. So it was designed for using several times and make it till, like, fake it till you can make it. I mean, the fake revolution and fake riots. Yeah, I see the comment about Girkin. Girkin, he is like a little bit different story, especially for all those like military right-wing nationalists. But yes, definitely they're using Girkin as well. And as I was saying, the most, I think most dangerous things for me as a person who can understand the mentality, it's those public appearances of those Ovechkin, Nevzorov, Shvets, Ponomarev, all these guys, which is kind of look like on the Ukrainian side now. And it's just making me laugh every time when I can see their public appearances, and they're trying to sell, again, imperialistic ideas and ideas about like good Russians, which is also, I'm sorry, total fake for me. And but it's a different story. So thank you so much for your attention. I'm done, and if you have any questions, I will be happy to assist and answer.
Thank you, Lana. It's very interesting and very useful, because here also not every person understands that, like, nostalgia for Soviet Union and also Russian propaganda. And I'm from Kherson, originally from southern Ukraine, and all free political forces which was financed directly from Russia, they use this narrative, like Soviet Union, Second World War, great economic growth of Soviet Union, and so on and so forth. So yeah, case of Girkin, I think it's also interesting, because now they push him as like turbo patriot. About Ponomarev, my own opinion, I know him quite good, so that he worked a lot in DC, and here, as you know, background checks very severe. So I'm personally not very support this idea, but everybody on this panel have their own opinion. So thank you so much. It's really useful, and it really have give a lot of answers why opposition in Russia doesn't exist, and in Belarus, why they haven't an institution to grow real opposition in archetypes and in image which Russian people like to vote, because like Khodorkovsky and Nemtsov was imprisoned or killed because they have more chances. Yeah, Malka have question. What do you think about Garry Kasparov? So Malka's question in the chat, maybe you can see.
Yeah, thank you so much, Malka. Yeah, I don't really think about this wing as like this wing of opposition as Kasparov and Khodorkovsky. As I describe them as a fake riot. Why? Because I think it's a little bit more complicated, and this idea of passport of good Russian, it's kind of way to build the attention of the Western world and same time try to gain the popularity of the people who escaped from Russia already. And he's trying to make this bridge and build this, how to say, trust probably to the people who is against of the Putin, against on dictatorship, against of the war. But let's say personally, because we are sharing our personal opinion as a citizen, I'm not buying this because it will be not the real passport. It's a fake passport again. So to me, it's like this beautiful idea probably for someone to have this white Russian, free Russia blue new flag. But I'm not buying this. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not buying Russian passport. Why? Because first of all, we not deserve this freedom yet. We have to fight for this. For as me personally, I'm trying to do my own way by supporting Ukraine and by telling the truth and telling my opinion. But I'm not buying any ideas of good Russian passport or this beautiful flag of free Russia, because to me, it's another way to build the fake, the technology of the propaganda against of the real situation, what people should fight for. So like it's just not real for me. I'm sorry.
Thank you for your opinion. And it's important that we also know opinion of people who have experience living in Russia. So yeah. So now Mark will explain examples from Horvatia and Eastern Europe. And also he very active in supporting Ukraine here in DC. So Mark, please, your examples and your opinion and how people in your country see this situation now. So thank you.
Oh yes, дякую, Kate, and yeah, thank you for organizing this important briefing and discussing Russian disinformation. My name is Mark Labatic. I am a board executive officer for the National Federation of Croatian Americans. I help out with the Ukrainian events as well, with providing more support for U.S. support for Ukraine and the security and the humanitarian aid it needs to ward off Russian aggression. It's unfortunate we have to meet like this because of Russia's barbarous attack against the sovereignty of Ukraine, and its people in the war has extended a year of bloodshed without an end in sight, and so almost pretty much about a year. However, we must remain committed to Ukraine's fight against Russia until victory is accomplished. And I say this because Ukraine was the second nation to recognize Croatia's independence. While we need to fight against we have to fight against the Yugoslav forces and Serbian ultranationalist rebels for 4 years during the bloody war in the former Yugoslavia in the 1990s. 30 years ago, we made that possibility where a smaller nation can overcome the odds of an aggressor of a larger power. And 30 years later, Ukraine has stepped up the unfortunate challenge to counter an authoritarian regime with the nuclear capabilities and nefarious expansion over its former Soviet neighbors. Now, my discussion is going to be relating to the Western Balkans, but also we'll talk about Croatia and its efforts to counter Russian disinformation. So the Western Balkans itself, after 30 years of war, is still trying to maintain stability and peace and full European integration. But it's currently engulfed in ethnic, political, and religious divisions that continues to challenge the geopolitical framework and engagement among U.S. and European allies. It's very critical and it destabilizes the region where endemic corruption, unemployment, ethnic hatred, and religious divisions that date back centuries still permeates within the population. I mean, it's historically referred to as the tinderbox twice during both wars and also in the recent wars of the former Yugoslavia, which left thousands of people killed and atrocities from ethnic cleansing and millions displaced. I mean, since 1992, the US and Europe engaged diplomatically with the nations through UN peacekeeping missions and resolutions to restrict fly zones over Bosnia and Herzegovina and NATO aircraft missions to counter Serbian aggression. Although security has improved since then, the lingering effects of war and persistent ethnic hatred still permeates in the political scenes and among the civilians. The continuous aggression between ethnic populations and polarization among its neighbors invites malignant actors like Russia and strategic opportunities to influence the anti-West rhetoric among non-EU Balkan countries like Montenegro, Northern Macedonia, Kosovo, and Bosnia-Herzegovina. And Serbia, it actually fuels Serbia the fuel it needs to ignite where violence and polemics as an excuse for neighbors to counter the West. Serbia is especially the focus nation in this region, where its president, Aleksandar Vučić, has sought close ties with Moscow and Beijing, while also asserting claims to affirm its neighbors to avoid taking steps to support the US and European integration, which in a way they're also accepting European Union integration, but also citing more narratives for Russia information. As of today, Serbia remains one of the few European countries to not sanction Russia for the war in Ukraine. Now, Serbia as a nation has maintained close cultural relations with Russia and common religious Orthodox ties with the patriarchs of Serbian and Russian churches. The nation contains media outlets poorly monitored and short-staffed along the Kremlin opportunities to facilitate Russian disinformation, with Serbian news agencies like Sputnik and RT TV. This has been going on since 2014, where it actually has broadcast pro-Russian information to demonize NATO, the US, and for starting the war in Ukraine, which makes up at least 60% of its population supporting these narratives. I mean, you even have murals glorifying Putin, calling him the savior of Serbia, and also street vendors selling T-shirts with Russian Zeds on the center of it with Serbian ultra-nationalist icons. And for example, I mean, another example for Russian media on the posting with Sputnik, they reposted several articles with narratives stating Russia's decision to give 6 MiG fighters to Serbia was a response to a threat from NATO member Croatia. And with these strong ties, with Russia, Serbia has used its military capabilities with Vučić and claimed to increase 10 times of its average capacity to provoke ethnic tensions. So at this point, Russia has based its soldiers in a niche airport in Serbia to incite ethnic tensions with its neighbor Kosovo, primarily in the northern regions of Kosovo, where there's primarily Serbian populations. So as a candidate country for the EU, Serbia's close ties to the Kremlin and its alarming support for Russian against Ukraine has been responsible for fueling ethnic tensions in the neighboring countries with significant Serb populations like Kosovo, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Montenegro, and polarization within the Serbian populations and the government. The regions with Serbian populations are regions that Vučić targets, which discussing Serbia's invitation for Russia's playbook and strategies to sow dissent in the region itself. Now, there are several methods that Russia maintains in order to, and also in a way helps Serbia to maintain its own strategies while also supporting the Kremlin and also supporting the Russian narratives to spread disinformation throughout the regions and also non-European Union members. First is Serbia does not recognize Kosovo's independence. One step to European Union integration is accepting Kosovo as an independent state from either Serbia, Albania, since its neighbors in 2018. Belgrade has pressured the region with at least 1.6% of the Serb population and its neighbors with significant Serb populations to not recognize Kosovo as an independent government. And Belgrade, with close ties with the Kremlin, replicates Putin and Xi Jinping's demand to not recognize Kosovo's independence. Along with 4 other NATO and EU countries, Greece, Romania, Spain, and Slovakia, and 1 European Union country, Cyprus. There have been raising tensions in terms of institutions and municipalities controlled by Belgrade and Kremlin to dissolve any form of recognition of Kosovo's independence. And these recent developments last month escalated into mass protests of over 10,000 Serbs throughout northern Kosovo and sparked violence over Pristina's band of Serbian-issued license plates that an order that actually dates back to 1999, War of Independence. During the beginning of the August, Russian state-owned media announced that the government in Pristina was confiscating license plates and IDs from Serbs, where local Serbs organized roadblocks, and the Albanians in Jarinje were harming Serbs near roadblocks. And also narratives that the Prime Minister of Kosovo, Albin Kurti, was rejecting autonomy and also the recognition of the northern municipality of Kosovo, which was actually completely false, because during the independence of Kosovo, Kurti actually recognized the municipalities and also Serbia, and also the Serbian populations having its own municipalities. But however, this is still a lingering issue that permeates in Kosovo. In fact, Belgrade has discussions among other Serbian Foreign Minister Ana Brnabić, whether to send peacekeeping forces in the region. A month later, NATO peacekeepers in Kosovo, as part of the KFOR, rejected Vučić's demand to allow security forces to enter Kosovo provinces. And despite these authorizations from UN resolution to allow Serbian forces to deploy in Kosovo. While there are no security forces crossing the border, there have been clear indications that Russia's main goal in the region is to sow more conflict in the region and division to support their narratives for a weak European Union unable to restore peace, and also a weak NATO's to respond to ethnic divisions. So as an attempt to calm the peace in the region, the US set up ultimatums and peace normalization talks between Brussels, US and Pristina since 2013, and has also given Vučić an ultimatum to accept Kosovo's independence or do not seek European Union integration at all, which has pressured Vučić in a certain way to at least to form talks with Brussels and also with the European High Commissioners to establish talks. However, there are also ultra far right Russian parliamentarians trying to stage boycotts against Vučić and calling him a traitor, and all these certain names that declares him an enemy of the state. And it's all polemics and also very political in a sense in the Serbian government. So, however, EU integration and acceptance of Kosovo's independence remains very polarized in the Serbian government, as you see, where in Kosovo, negative EU sentiments remains high. And the second reason also I want to mention is Serbian affirmation of lost sovereignty claims in Serbian majority regions, like Kosovo and Bosnia-Herzegovina, has continued to spiral downwards in terms of stability and normalization. And despite the signing of the Dayton Peace Accords that ended the war in 1995, peace has reached into the peace agreement would determine peaceful existence between the three constituent peoples in the agreement established in the Federation of Bosnia-Herzegovina, and which is controlled by Croats and Bosnian Muslims, and also it's the semi-autonomous region, the semi-autonomous region that's controlled by the Serb majority that controls 49% of the region of Bosnia-Herzegovina, which is called Republika Srpska. So just like Serbia, Republika Srpska is actually dedicated in pro-Russian stance, especially with the leader of the Serbian tripartite presidency, Milorad Dodik, has rallied a strong voice to create secession talks of offering Putin the ability to aid him militarily for a so-called Serbian cause to separate from the region, separate from the Federation itself. And like Serbia, Republika Srpska is predominantly Serbian Orthodox, and its patriarch is very close to the Russian Orthodox Church, and the same historical ties both Serbia and Russia has. And also there's been stories. There's also been the story that recently that in the capital region in Banja Luka, the Russian Serbian sponsored church presented a church, and to honor Tsar Nicholas II, which was agreed by Dodik, and to articulate the honor of the Serbian veterans during World War I. And since April 24th, the Russian-centered news outlets have circulated pro-Russian narratives circulating by the Kremlin to fuel internal divisions and subject in the invasion of Ukraine, and headlines saying Ukraine invades Russia, and using overtly exaggerated claims of Ukrainians committing genocide against Russians in the Donbass, comparing the massacres in the infamous Srebrenica massacre. And these are mainly just high votizations, clickbait logic, and poor investigative journalism through social media accounts in the media to spread all this disinformation, and a strategy that the Kremlin utilizes throughout Western Balkans and throughout Bosnia and Herzegovina, which the Federation has poorly enforced and failed to prevent. So, and according to the polls in the opinion of Russia, the responses are polarized, with 28% saying that they're somewhat favorable to Russia, and only 23% saying that they're somewhat favorable to Russia. And despite the majority of the support for NATO integration, which is at 48%, there's still a greater interest among Serb electorate to provide military cooperation with Russia. I mean, since 2017, Milo Dodik has maintained close relations with Putin for decades and has agreed to a dual partnership to construct regional police forces focusing on intelligence gathering, counterterrorism, and cybersecurity. And also within the agreement, Serbian specialists would travel to Moscow to receive formal training and establish operations in Republika Srpska to train local Russian to train locals in Russian protocols in Banja Luka, and train them for paramilitary group operations like forming the Serbian Honor and the available recruitment for the PMC Wagner group, which they have actually recruited locals there in Serbia as well. The US Ministry of Internal Affairs in 2018 recorded purchase of 2,500 long-barreled weapons this year from Serbian manufacturers that are about 10 times the amount of Sarajevo for this regional military. And this military buildup has extended as an existential threat to its sovereignty and the security of Bosnia and Herzegovina and its neighbors, and also poses an existential threat to Croatia as well, primarily. Now, for the support of Ukraine increases throughout Europe, there has been growing resistance for the Balkan nations to resist pressures coming into the region. One nation's I would name is Croatia, which I would state that is actually one of the prominent EU nations that has directly taken actions to combat Russian disinformation and greater EU integration. However, its entrance into Schengen has caused several divisions within Romania and Bulgaria. It has caused political polarization where a lot of political groups taken resistance against Ukraine, including the current president Zoran Milanovic. Now, President Milanovic, since the start of the war, has given pro-Russian narratives and inciting fights with the Sabor and also Croatian parliamentary members last month, with stating that Crimea does not belong to Ukraine, or has even held talks to suspend training of Ukrainian soldiers in Croatia, which he actually persuaded the Sabor to reject the proposal out of a 2/3 majority to suspend EU military missions in Ukraine. And within that respect, the polarization has gone to a point where the current Prime Minister, Andrej Plenković, has formally cut ties with Milanovic entirely, terminating all contracts and rejecting to attend the National Security Council with the president. So, unlike Milanovic, Plenković tends to keep his support for Ukraine and keeps it strongly and firmly. And after several phone calls with President Zelensky, has remained strongly committed to support for Ukraine and dedicated for additional security assistance, and to maintain its posture on security to target Russian disinformation. One of the examples of several attacks that Croatia faced of Russian hacking was back in March 23rd, the police probed the hacking of the daily Slobodna Dalmacija, whereby an unknown user who replaced 10 older articles prompting Russian propaganda with headlines reading Western deception machine, or which side are you on, or in the United States of America is admitting that they have hidden laboratories. But this is actually was quickly condemned, and the Slobodna Dalmacija actually issued an apology for allowing this to happen. And he quickly condemned the attack and held investigation and they promoted investigations with the split criminal intelligence services.
Mark, can I ask you also to, maybe after your speech, to share these examples? And you see, it's very interesting that on Balkans, Russia do the same as they do like in Ukraine. So they trying to move through political forces. And I have like one question to you. So is these people which you mentioned, they truly believe in Putin's leadership, or they just take money from Russia? No, so you know, like in Ukraine, for example, I give you example what I'm talking about. So in Ukraine, for example, we have some people who truly believe in all this Russian mir, like Stremousov. And some people, they go to all these pro-Russian political forces because Russia just give cash and cash to bribe to voters and other issues to support their messages. So can you a little clarify who was the audience of these political messages, and maybe then also after your speech share some advertising or articles which we can analyze also. If it will be on your language, it's also okay, but it's interesting to see and to compare. Yeah, so it's question to you, and then we will move into Irina's example, and then we'll do our opinion how to fight with that. If Alexander, as pollsters and sociologist, wanted to add something from his point of view, also please welcome. So Mark, what you mentioned about that, like?
Well, throughout the Western Balkans, there's also a lot of cultural ties that Serbia has with Russia, and even they don't have, even whether if they're getting bought or even purchased other bribes from Kremlin officials, I mean, they still maintain those close ties, and even I mean these ambivalent, these friendly relations that they have with Russia actually dates back even to the Balkan Wars in the 1900s. It's dating for centuries, and they actually tied a lot of their cultural narratives and their religious solidarity with Russia. And then, instead of actually seeing themselves as a Western counterpart. I mean, but usually you see a lot of this this division primarily in weaker Balkan nations like Bosnia and Herzegovina and Kosovo, Montenegro and Northern Macedonia, where there's primary ethnic tensions that still brew within the population. I mean, usually in Bosnia and Herzegovina you have an entire state that's semi-autonomous from the federation itself, even though it does cooperate with the federation. I mean, it's very complicated and very complex, but they still assert the fact that since Bosnia and Herzegovina and the federation is very weakened, and actually since there's a lot of election disinformation and a lot of dissension, that there's a reason that they can just pull away from the West and actually and establish close ties with Putin by providing them with trade benefits, energy as well. Energy is also a big one as well, which is another point I want to address with you. I mean, Russia continues to destabilize the Balkans through Serbia and and Republika Srpska and non-EU nations. And a lot of these non-EU nations that are under with primarily Serbian populations are actually drawn to this brain drain that's coming from the Kremlin. But usually you don't see a lot of that in Croatia, because I mean, in Croatia there is actually there is actually a rule of law and also some autonomy for Serbian communities have a final status in the issues, and also at least promote. They can actually at least participate equally in politics, and also is kind of a reason why they don't necessarily draw into the narratives in Belgrade or even in the Kremlin primarily. I hope that answered your question. That's.
We have one more question to you from Lana. You can see in chat, and then we will move in a little bit quickly forward because, yeah, we're not in timing. So please answer to Lana's question. You can see her question in chat.
Okay. Is it true about the high level of trust that Putin's regime and all levels of Serbian society is seeing for Serbian abroad now? 2014 and 2023 by Russian Federation. Can you explain why Russian disinformation is working so deep in all kinds of Serbian populations? Well, yeah, primarily, like I said, about the close narratives that Serbia has with Russia, and also primarily is a big game changer is energy, primarily. That's actually a really good influence of Russian influence. And since that's the war that Ukraine accelerates, the European dependence on Gazprom oil and energy has reduced, causing high prices and energy inflation throughout Europe, which actually draws more nations, and also primarily nations like Serbia, to draw closer to Gazprom, and also more agreements with Russian energy. And also, since the fact that Croatia cut ties with Serbian energy, sending in energy to Serbia, that they actually drawn closer ties with constructing Turkish Stream pipeline, which transports Russian oil via the Black Sea with one line of 15.75 BCM pipelines in Bulgaria, with access to Serbia, Northern Macedonia, and Hungary. And this is something how Serbian politicians are able to agree to the fact that they can diversify energy instead of just relying on Western counterparts. And this is something that it continues to destabilize. And also the fact, and also sovereignty of law, and also the Serbian affirmation of lost territories is definitely something that a lot of Serbian narratives and far right ultranationalists would have to, in a way, assert that this is the cause to fight for, and this is something that needs to be addressed, because in a way they still believe that the U.S. and European Union caused a lot of the ethnic cleansings in the 1990s, and primarily in the far right section of the Serbian narratives. And this is what Putin, and actually this is Putin's narrative. This is Putin's strategy. He actually capitalizes on these narratives, and also this disinformation. He wants to sow violence. He wants to sow more ethnic tensions within the regions itself, so that there can be absolutely no reason for these neighbors to recognize Kosovo as an independent nation, or even non-European nations like Montenegro and Northern Macedonia, to recognize Kosovo's independence. They want to maintain, Russia wants to maintain that division. Primarily.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark, very much. It was very interesting to compare different backgrounds of the roots of propaganda, of why it's spreading, why it's popular, why people believe it. So I will be quite short with my points, and then I have a proposition to make some summary, some conclusions by Alexander. Then if someone has questions, we can make quick questions and finish our conference. So my points is more about solutions. Being involved in our cyber coordinating team during the war, I had possibility to communicate maybe with hundreds people from IT, from cyber, from PR, from media. And so a few words about world solutions. So unfortunately, there are no perfect tools and solutions to detect propaganda, fake news, and to fight with that. I've seen a lot of teams from like the strongest teams, government teams, private teams from Germany, USA, our Ukrainian guys, and still even basing on so popular today artificial intelligence solutions, still it's impossible to detect perfectly fake news and propaganda. But so how it was going in Ukraine, and not only Ukraine, I guess all over the world. Cyber teams or media teams, they have some people, like they build open sources, open channels, where all people can send fake news channels or propaganda channels. So I will show you, for example, how it looks like. so in Ukraine, we build, it's usually in Discord or in Signal, for example. It's like open channel where everyone can join, just passing through basic security, and then can send some propaganda and fake news channels from social networks, from web, and then this been checked by another team, and then usual tools to complain or to remove or to complain on these webs or on these channels. For example, like we were forming one moment, I don't know why yes. Oh, very strange. I wanted to show you how how looks my computer. It's okay. It's kind of list, just list with the channel, and then we work with this list. Unfortunately, yes, mainly you're doing by hands all that, but I still want to show you my computer. So let me try to. Very strange. I don't know why it show you background, but not the computer. Okay, if I show you like this and you tell me, do you see it?
No, we see only your photo, but you now share the screen.
I'm sorry.
Share screen and show.
No, it's not. I'm just on telephone. I wanted to show my computer, which is in front of me, but I still don't know how to do that. Okay, 1 second. If I won't find it, then I will just tell you, explain. Okay, so this is one thing. That's still a lot of things we should make just by hands, by dozens, hundreds people. The other things, how we search for propaganda channels. It's of course people from these teams signing for typical Telegram channels of, for example, military correspondents of Russia, and when it's going about some fake news, and when you, for example, signed for, like I signed for 59 Russian channels. Most of them are some Russian volunteers, some Russian military correspondents, journalists, and just some news channels. And when they put some fake news, it's usually very typical narrative, typical phrases, and in most of the channels, or in some channels, you can see quite the same message. And again, what you do with that, you are, or you just study the narrative, depend of your purpose, yeah, or you are complaining and try to close the channel, the web, whatever. But talking about the government level, still there are some tools which exist. For example, if we're talking about, there is data miner, so DATAMINR. Everything will have Katerina, and she will share with anyone who requests. So this is solution development by American team. This is used by governments. For example, I was told about this by Denmark government. How it works? It's based on artificial intelligence, and it detects the roots of the news. It's automatically, yeah, analyzing web, analyzing like in Google, yeah, how many news, what was the primer, background news, and if it was just one source of this news, or it was like 10 or 15 different sources of this news. So this is the main argument for them to choose, to detect and to differ, is it fake or not fake? Because if something has only one root, only one source where it appeared, this program detects this as possibly this program detects as possibly fake news. If different journalists put this news quite the same time, it detected as possibly real news. So it's still not perfect solution, but it's the best what we have now. Quite a few governments, it's not something very unique, so quite a few governments use this. And one more thing I want to remind to everyone, when we're talking about Russian propaganda, we should remember that, for example, each year they've been spending $1.1 or $1.2 billion a year for like media support, but it's actually for propaganda. During the last year, the budget of Russian propaganda was $2.4 billion. So we can imagine that the whole world, the whole media world is fighting with a really huge machine, which been developing for decades, for ages. Like 10 years ago, I've been living in London, working in Bell Pottinger. It used to be the strongest political consulting and media company in African and European environment. And like 90% of clients, it were clients by Russian government companies. So can you imagine that how much money they've been inputting in their propaganda, in their media, in support of their ideas and narratives, and they've been developing this by dozen ages, and very strategically, very step by step, very following some. It's very easy and popular technology like Overton window, but it still works, and they still follow it. So I guess these were my main points about solutions that been using by Ukraine and by the world. So I would ask now to make some conclusions by Alexander. Okay. And if someone have questions to any of participants, so please ask. So Alexei or Alexander, who can make for us some summary or some conclusions, please? Hello? Hello? Alexei, Alexander, guys, are you here?
Sorry, I have very unstable internet, so maybe
Yes.
Alexei.
I'm losing my signal all the time. A few minutes and I'm losing my signal. I don't know why.
Me the same, frankly speaking. In Kyiv, today is some unique day. Okay, so let's make it some short summary. Just you as more professional in these things, I guess you would do it perfectly for a few minutes. Summary of all our participants' speech. Okay, if you still have bad internet, so please, our guests, do you have some questions? Anyone to anybody?
Yes, I can ask. So, sorry, that's my job to ask questions as an interviewer. Thank you, Irina. So I have a main question to finalize all our thoughts, what's to do? Because, okay, we understood their tools. We understood they get the budget. We understood they get the target. What's now? How to fight with that? Do you have any ideas, shortly, like your personal opinion, without any statistic, without anything?
Definitely, yeah. We have, first of all, it's to make awareness. It's actually what we're doing now, because we understand we're talking not just about our conversation between us 10 or 11 people. It's going about spreading this information, making follow up with this information among media, among think tank, about politicians. So spreading awareness is a really very important tool. And of course, And of course, I hope technology has been developing very quickly, and those tools which are not perfect now, basing on some artificial intelligence technologies, I hope they will be developed in a while. Someone else would like to make a comment on Lana's question? What is the solution?
If you don't mind, if you hear me,
please.
Do you hear
please.
me? Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
please.
If you don't mind, Alexei Burlakov, I think we are making right stuff for to fight with this propaganda and to fight with all the Russian meanings that they translate for us, because we know their instruments and we know how to broke these instruments, and we have our own instruments. Also with propaganda instruments, it's we can do it. We can use it on the war. While we are in war, we can use all the instruments we have, because we are fighting for our world. And I think that all the instruments would be useful. Now, if we know what they would do on the next step, we can how is it calling, controversy to them. We can destroy the myth that they build in, and they build the myth on every war conflict. They are the same. I have told already, but they are the same, and we can see what they would use next. If you understand what I'm saying, that's all.
Yeah, you mean the predict the next steps, yes?
Yeah, thank you.
And also one more thing I would like to mention and to remind to everyone that actually this is the other day Lana shared with me this link, this information. Like, yeah, we all expected, we know that each country has its own intelligence. Yeah, we all know that intelligence services have different departments, but I guess not each country has, for example, a psychological department which consists of 29 representatives in different cities all over the country, which are working especially for different psychological tools. So this actually so this is actually propaganda. So can you imagine, it is 29 representatives. It means that the whole buildings are full of people working on propaganda, fake news. So this is really strong machine. So, and I would agree, yeah, with Alexander that awareness is a very important and powerful tool for us and for the world. Yeah.
I would like to add, first of all, awareness is very important, because on the political level, we need more support. We need the politicians to acknowledge this problem, this challenge. And secondly, we all are living in democracies, and democracies, they believe in freedom of speech, freedom of the press. So we are very vulnerable to disinformation because of that. If we want to keep it, I mean, we can block certain propaganda channels, and we need to block troll attacks, everything that is controlled information warfare. But the other big thing is that we need this education. And if we have a certain education about what Russia is actually doing, what is the state of this country, and when we understand what happened in Ukraine, especially since 2014, then we could build a certain kind of shield. And if you are under this shield, you are somehow a little bit immune against the disinformation. I was always immune because I knew Ukraine well, because I was there a lot of times. Nobody could tell me the lies. And we should do more prevention work, because at the moment, most of the people in Europe are not immune. And if the first thing that you hear is the disinformation, it's very, very hard work to change people's minds. So we need to do education. And one more remark, it needs to be compact. So I believe in the KISS formula. So the most important facts to get the big pictures, we need to deliver, and we need to parrot it, because it takes a lot of time until people remember it correctly.
I'm sorry, can I also say something? The first thing that we have to realize while dealing with the Western audience is that for most of them, Ukraine is not actually the first point in agenda. So we are working in order to raise an awareness, but we have to put our messages in the way that would be crystal clear and really easy to understand. They will not dig into the details and invest time and efforts probably to find out the truth. They have to get the clear picture from like several sentences, like from 2 abstracts maximum. So like our messages are supposed to be really simple and understandable, even for the audience with a low level of informedness about the whole situation and about the history of our region. And a second thing that I want to stress, that of course we are using a lot social media in order to communicate with our potential audiences, but also the algorithm of social media are kind of creating multiple informational bubbles among every user. So if someone is kind of supports certain points of view, the entire flood of information this person is getting is like correspondent to that point of view. And it's ironic because the algorithm is built the way that if they believe certain messages from a Russian propaganda, they will keep getting it every time they are opening Facebook, on Instagram, and even like it will be complicated to get in this flood with our messages. So I would suggest using more indirect messages in entertainment content, and the content that is supposed to be, that it looks like not the direct content describing the situation on the war, but also to get there the idea that we are dealing with an independent democratic state that was brutally invaded. And that is supposed to be like in different contents, like pictures, small clips, maybe even like entertainment blogs that had to do somewhat with the Ukrainian agenda or the Ukrainian history, etc. So Russia is using a wide range of various types of content. So we are supposed to do the same.
I guess someone have some any comments or questions, or we can finish and then we can share with Ekaterina all our today points presentation in written form, and so it would be easier to her to form and some conclusions documents, some document for think tanks.
Also, may
I guess we.
I'm sorry. May I also
okay, please.
provide some conclusions? Just a couple of quick conclusions for my point. So for the Western Balkans, I mean, we're noticing that, I mean, a lot of the stabilization among the people, and since the fact that we faced war and tragedy and ethnic cleansing, and a lot of these weaknesses actually draws Russia to construct these narratives and in order to resurrect these tensions and drive stagnation. And it fuels Putin's war machine of disinformation if only Serbia decides to continue with EU integration efforts and use its position to recognize Kosovo's independence. Then there could be a possibility for Russian disinformation to actually diminish within the region itself. Which I mean, and I believe new integration efforts must be implemented for the region among EU and US leaders, just efforts to expand efforts. There's also an initiative called the 3 Seas Initiative, which actually is a project to to provide additional cybersecurity and digitalization projects for greater interconnectivity with Central Europe, and also alliance with the Baltics and also the Balkan nations to help expand 5G connectivity, and also to combat and more cybersecurity initiatives to combat Russian disinformation efforts, and to combat these mill bloggers that are commenting and asserting all these narratives. And also efforts to counter Russian recognition of Kosovo must also be implemented to ensure Putin's efforts are challenged in the Western Balkans. And also I want to reiterate a comment that Joseph mentioned. He's the senior fellow of the Foreign Policy Institute and a professor in Johns Hopkins International School of International Relations. He stated in the UK Parliamentary Conference that the solution to the Balkan rests in Ukraine's hands, that the victory of Ukraine actually depends on the stabilization of the Western Balkans. And with that decision, a bold decision by Kyiv's position will have to recognize Kosovo's independence in order to set a high precedence over the Kremlin's narrative, where in a way, since there's a greater recognition for Ukrainians' efforts for victory, that the four nations that do not the four NATO nations and European Union nations that do not recognize Kosovo independence could actually switch their narratives and support Zelensky's efforts to support Kyiv's and to support Kosovo's independence. So a greater shift in opinion among these nations could propose a great precedence to ensure security not only in Kosovo but in the Western Balkans. And the Ukrainian people have shown this great bravery, proving that in order to curtail Moscow's rapid expansion of the entire nation. So I believe also a catalyst where Kyiv supports where Zelensky makes a statement where he supports the independence of Kosovo can actually provide a great precedence for European and in the strategy throughout the Western Balkans and the Baltic regions. So I'll end it there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I want to thank to everyone who joined us today, independent on different time on internet connection or better or worse English. Doesn't matter. All of you are amazing. You are doing a great job. I personally understand very well that for most of you, it's mostly kind of volunteering job. It's your personal initiative. And sometimes these kind of things can be quite dangerous when you're dealing with it. So you are amazingly brave. It was great to meet you, to hear you. It was great to work together with you. I hope we'll change a lot of things in the world in future altogether. Thank you to Katerina who initiated this meeting. You are unbelievably productive and hardworking person. I just sometimes I just don't know how do you manage to make some great initiatives like 10 or 5 months and it all successful with all perfect follow-ups with great results. So thank you very much. Some second part after follow-up and we'll keep working on this direction. And I would like to remember that Katerina's initiative of Institute of Democracy, a think tank in USA. So please join as an expert and share your points, your articles, your views. Because if we all agree that one of the best tool is awareness, so let's do it together. Please, very welcome to be the experts and members of this Institute of Democracy and the think tank. Thank you very much, everyone. And please make copy before we finish before we finish the call. Please take a look in our chat and everyone make a copy. What do you need? I shared from my side this website Data Miner, this government tool to detect propaganda on some level. And I also shared those Russian department that is working with psychological tools and propaganda and fakes. So just check if you would made a copy, and also from Mark some links there were, so please make a copy. Yeah, it's okay, everyone managed, we can finish our call. Okay, I guess yes. Okay, thank you very much, and see you, we all in touch. Thank you.